Hello and welcome! Today let's talk about impulse control and self-regulation. When thinking about teaching social emotional skills, we want to first make sure we're observing what our students need, what are their areas of growth, and then we want to teach them specific strategies for the skill areas that they need help with. After we teach them the specific strategies we want to see them using, then we want to give them time to practice those strategies. So given that overall structure, let's talk about the social emotional skill of impulse control and self-regulation. When I'm teaching my students about impulse control and self-regulation, I like to use the phrase boss my body. This teaches the students that they are the boss of their body, that their brain is in control of what their body does, that they have the control. And they really like hearing that. It gives them ownership over it. It's also an easy and simple phrase for me to remember. So when I see students struggling with self-regulation, I might say, hey, boss your body. And they know what this means because I've taught them. So when we talk about teaching boss my body, we talk about how our bodies can have different speeds, that sometimes our bodies are too slow because they are tired or hungry or bored. And this is actually okay sometimes because when we're getting ready for bed, we want our bodies to be moving slow. But sometimes our bodies go too fast, like they're wiggly or very excited or we're running around. And that's okay too when we're outside at recess or at gym. But when we're trying to learn, we want our body speed to be just right so that our brain can focus on the learning that's going on. So after I introduce what the different body speeds are, we talk about the strategies to use to get their bodies going just right. I like to use this little book with my students about reminding them of the strategies that we have talked about. Going for a walk if you're going really fast, or even if your body is really tired, going for a walk can help. Getting a drink can help if you're going slow as well. Some other things that I teach my kids about are body breaks, and we go over the expectations for those. So a really great body break might be just a chair push-up. So put your arms on the side of your chair or at the base of your chair and push your body up. Do that a couple of times, right? That really stimulates the body, but it also helps it get just right, the speed just right. Another one is a wall push-up. So putting your hands against the wall and standing and doing a push-up vertically as opposed to touching the gross school floor. So those are two great body breaks to help wake up the body. But they also work as well for getting the wiggles out. But also like jumping jacks work well for that kind of thing. I like using this cute little phrase that we've come up with. When my body's going quick, I take 3 breaths and that does the trick. So we do a lot of deep breathing in my classroom, and that definitely helps with teaching self-regulation. And noticing that when our bodies are going too fast, to get our bodies going just right, to boss our body, we have to take deep breaths to slow down. These are some of my absolute favorite books for bossing our body. I would also add It's Hard to Be a Verb by Julia Cook. She's got some fantastic books out there. But these are definitely, she's got 2 right here. I have Ants in My Pants and Personal Space Camp, all Julia Cook, as well as Be Where Your Feet Are. Look at that. She's got 3 of them. Winston Wiggles is a new one, but it's also great. So these are good for the students that have a lot of wiggles, whose bodies are going really fast, who need help with self-regulation. They're good because they teach really good strategies, but they're also good because the kids recognize that it's not just them. When you have kids that struggle with self-regulation, their names are being called all the time because they're constantly having trouble to regulate. And so you sort of are doing that regulating for them, but then they're hearing their name a lot. And that can have a negative side effect on their self-esteem. No one wants to hear their name all the time unless you're a teacher, right? You're used to it if you're a teacher, but it's a negative hearing your name. It's not for good things, right? And so I like to read these books not only because they teach good strategies, but because the kids see they're not alone if they're wiggling a lot, if they're having trouble with self-regulation. So it's good for them to see that. And for the other kids to see that too. Okay, so here are my favorite games for teaching and practicing self-regulation. You might not have realized that some of these are teaching self-control. Move this out of the way so you can see better. Red light, green light is actually a perfect game for teaching impulse control because you are telling the kids when they can go and when they have to stop. And then their brains have to tell their bodies to stop or to move. That's impulse control, that's self-regulation. They want to keep moving. They want to win. They want to be the winner at the end of the green light, but they have to stop when you say red light. So that game is great for self-regulation and impulse control, and you might not have even realized when you were playing it that you were helping with that. Freeze dance is another classic that is also really great for teaching impulse control and self-regulation because you're playing the music, they're having such a fun time dancing to it, but when the music stops, they have to stop. And so it's great for teaching about teaching their bodies to stop and having their brains tell their bodies to stop. So I use this language with them during the games. Tell your brains have to tell your bodies to stop. Boss your body. You're the boss. You tell it to stop, right? So then we have the opposite game where I pick a couple directions and the kids have to do the opposite of what I tell them. So I go over what the directions are and what the opposite are ahead of time. I always do a stand up, sit down one. So if I say stand up, everyone actually has to sit down. So they have to do the opposite of what I told them, which is really good practice for impulse control and self-regulation because their brain is hearing the directions. They want to do that direction. They want to follow it. But actually they have to stop and do the opposite. So it takes a lot of self-control. So I do stand up, sit down. So if I sit down, they stand up. I'll do some kind of like walk or dance. And then freeze, so if I say dance, they're actually frozen. If I say freeze, they're actually dancing. I might do like a quiet, loud, or quiet talking, where if I say talk, they're quiet. If I say quiet, they're talking. Depends on the group if they can handle that. Sometimes they get too loud. I'll do like straight, or they have to do this, and then I'll do like zigzag, and they have to go straight, something like that. Or crisscross. That makes more sense. Crisscross. If I say crisscross, they go straight. If I say straight, they go crisscross. You can make it up. You can have the kids make it up. You could do something related to the academics, like petals and roots. I don't know. You could do something like that related to academics. Plus and minus, but do the opposite. So you could decide with the kids, but you have to go over it ahead of the game so that they know what the opposite is. And I would stick to maybe 3. If they get really good at it, maybe 4, maybe add a 4th one. I wouldn't do too much, mostly for your sake, because it's hard to remember them all and to remember what the opposite is. So that's the opposite game. Statues is a class favorite. They ask for it every day. The way it works is it's kind of like Night at the Museum, where there are a bunch of statues in the classroom, but they are coming to life. They are alive. But when the museum guard is watching them, they cannot move because they cannot be found out to be alive. When the museum guard is turned, that's when they have to move because they're alive. They can't just stay there. They do have to move. So statues is great for impulse control because they have to freeze and stop when the museum guard is looking at them, and then they have to move when they're not looking at them. So that's a really fun one. And the final activity that is so great for teaching and practicing self-regulation and impulse control is the bubbles challenge. So for this, all you need is some bubbles, and you're going to, either in the classroom or outside, you tell the kids that you're going to blow the bubbles. A bubble maker is even better because you get a lot more bubbles that way. You tell the kids that you're going to blow the bubbles, but they're not allowed to touch them. They're not allowed to pop the bubbles. And this is so hard for them. But that's why it's such good practice for impulse control. After a few seconds, you say, okay, go pop the bubbles. And you can see if you can go longer and longer each time, even if you could see if you could get all the way to the bubbles fall to the bottom. But if you do that, make sure you then have some rounds where they're just playing with the bubbles because you want to keep it fair for them and rewarding. So the bubbles challenge is a really good one to practice self-regulation with. So those are all my tips and tricks for teaching impulse control and self-regulation. A lot of them are things that you might already be doing and aren't realizing are helping with impulse control. But as you're watching this or reading the blog, if you have any questions or other activities that you really like, put them in the comments. I'd love to read them and share them out, and I'll be happy to answer any questions as well. Thanks so much.